Well, the reason she stayed in as long as she did was because she was being funded. You know, she spent over $100 million to win Vermont and Washington, D.C. But really, it's her ego that kept her in, along with that money for this long. And her inability to endorse Donald Trump, I believe, comes from the fact that she still believes that if something were to happen to Donald Trump legally, making him unable to run, I think she thinks that she is the number two in line. And that's delusional thinking. The Republican base does not want that. The country, I don't believe, wants that. But in her mind, and what her people have been telling her, is that she is number two as far as the Republican Party, the mega base. Simply not the case, but try to tell that to Nikki Haley.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't even manage to win in her own state, did she? Which should, you would think, tell her a pretty decent number of people do not want her there, do not even want her running as a running mate at all.
Yeah, you know, I think that the people that were supporting Nikki Haley weren't supporting Nikki Haley because they actually supported her policies, her agenda. I think she has represented the other. The folks that don't want to vote for Donald Trump, they still consider themselves Republican, conservative. They don't want to vote for Joe Biden. So they wanted an other option. They wanted an other box to check. And they found that with Nikki Haley. But there's really no allegiance to Nikki Haley or her policy positions, at least as it comes to Republicans and conservatives. So she represented the other. Now the other doesn't exist. The question remains, will those folks go back to Donald Trump, or will they go over to Joe Biden, whoever the Democrat nominee ends up being? That's the only question that remains in my mind.
Yeah, and critics of Donald Trump are now kind of hanging by a thread, aren't they? They're grasping at anything that they can to say, oh, but what if this happens, or what if that happens? And there are those who now say, oh, but, you know, if he gets convicted of all of these crimes, then people won't vote for him. I don't see any evidence to say that's true at all.
I don't believe that Donald Trump will be out of this race. I think that Donald Trump would run his campaign from prison if he was able, and I think he would find a way if he wasn't. Donald Trump is resilient. He's a fighter. He's not backing down under any means, and I do believe that Joe Biden cannot say the same. I believe that Joe Biden will be replaced either at the convention or shortly thereafter, but Donald Trump, he's going to keep fighting, and the more they come after him, the more his popularity, at least with Republicans, rises. So for the time being, it looks like we have the rematch that not many Americans want, but it's a rematch. If it's between Joe and Donald Trump, I think more people are going to decide that Donald Trump and the Donald Trump presidency is something that's much more appealing to their pocketbook and their safety.
Yes, well, certainly Joe Biden is becoming less and less appealing with every passing day. Here's another example of his kind of blundering that we saw just in the last couple of days. Have a look at this.
I have a lot of questions. I better not start the questions. I'll get in trouble.
What's your message for Super Tuesday voters? Everyone please move this way. Super Tuesday, say, do you have a message for voters? Thanks, come on.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
I mean, you hate to think about the fact that that's how he looks when he's in the Oval Office and they're firing questions at him about whether or not we should invade some country or other.
Yeah, exactly. You know, listen, the Democrats in this country have a well-oiled machine when it comes to electioneering, the mechanics of elections. They have mastered it, and I give them credit. Early voting, mail-in voting, voter registration, ballot harvesting, they do it all, and they do it all well. That's how they were able to get Joe Biden across the finish line in 2020. But that isn't the case now because they might not even have a candidate that can stand on his own 2 feet, quite literally. So the Democrats are scrambling. They're looking for a replacement. I believe they are eyeing California Governor Gavin Newsom. I do believe, and I've always maintained, that that is going to be their nominee. And I believe that at this point, they understand they just have to get Joe through the next few months so they can continue to ramrod through their agenda while they have the time. But I don't think that they're fooling themselves any more than you and I are. Joe Biden simply cannot last another 4 years, if even another 4 months.
No, exactly right. We're going to come to Jennifer Ewing in a second here, who's with Republicans Overseas UK. But first, I want to show both of you another little snapshot of the campaigns for Super Tuesday. There's one of our favourite women over there, Marjorie Taylor Greene. She recently told our Foreign Minister David Cameron to kiss her ass. Here she is dealing with Emily Maitlis. And for those of you who are a bit, unfortunately, sensitive, be very careful. There's some bad words in this. Have a look at this.
What about Jewish space lasers? Tell us about Jewish space
No,
lasers.
why don't you go talk about Jewish space lasers? And really, why don't you off? How about that?
I was hoping we'd just play the whole thing out, but she says the F word. Emily Maitlis, of course, from the news agents, is one of the top left-wing journalists in this country. They decided to send her to cover Trump. I don't know why.
Yeah, listen, I don't like when we have representatives of the Republican Party who speak that way. I think it's classless. I might agree with some of the policy positions of someone like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I don't like the way that she presents herself. I think right now in the United States, we're looking for somebody to unify us. Even if we're not unified on the issues, we should be unified in decency. So it does bother me to see that. I don't think that the F word should ever be thrown around, especially when you're representing Americans, you're representing your constituents. This is very much her brand, and she likes to get attention. She likes to get social media attention, and she will get that. However, I don't think it's a great representation of the Republican Party, and I wish that, quite frankly, she would stop doing things like this.
Yes, well, it doesn't look like she's going to. But listen, Tommy, if you met Emily Maitlis, you might feel the same way. But let me ask you one final question. What about the likelihood that Donald Trump is going to pick a female vice president to run with him? And if so, who would that be?
So listen, on the Republican side, we don't like to just check boxes. We're not Democrats, so we don't look at the oppression totem pole and decide who our running mates are going to be or who's going to lead our party. But I do think that if he's going to pick a woman, it should be a strong woman, and it should by no means be Nikki Haley. I'm really hopeful that Donald Trump would not make that mistake. That would be a hard pill for a lot of conservative Republicans to swallow. We have seen enough of Nikki Haley, and we hope she goes back to some board somewhere and leaves Republican politics alone. At least that's my hope.
Tomi Lahren, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you, and we'll see you again very soon, I'm sure.